Hello, it's Dr. Deborah M. Wilson, and I am reading my book, The Resilient Learner's Backpack. I am on step 3. If you haven't read the introduction in steps 1 and 2, please do that. There are videos available where I'm reading these steps. If you're just listening in the car or at home while you're cleaning or doing other things, then you will just hear my voice. But if you're watching this on YouTube, then you will also see some animation. Step 3, identifying regulating resources. Books, articles, and programs focusing on regulation generally target self-regulation as the goal. According to polyvagal theory, co-regulating with another person comes before self-regulation. This important process is often left out of discussions regarding self-regulation. When I shared the concept that co-regulation comes before self-regulation with a colleague, she disagreed with its premise. She said, "I teach my students the calming moves so they can do them on their own when needed. They must learn to self-regulate before they are able to regulate with others." I responded, "Tell me how the student learns the calming moves." She explained, "I sit with the student and demonstrate the moves, and then we do them together." Do you see what happened in this example? The student learned self-regulation by co-regulating with the adult. Infants learn to co-regulate with their caregivers. If co-regulation isn't available from infancy and throughout developmental stages, children may have a difficult time self-regulating later in life. If they do manage to self-regulate, it requires a lot of effort and creates stress in the body. We all know learners who expend a lot of energy maintaining regulation. Using 3 sources of academic regulation to support resiliency. Let's support learners by understanding and applying the science of academic regulation, an area of research describing 3 types of learning with 3 different sources of regulation. For self-regulated learning, the learner relies on regulating resources from within. The learner takes an active role in accomplishing learning objectives, planning, organizing, self-monitoring progress, and overcoming obstacles found on their learning paths. Co-regulated learning is a reliance on regulation from outside oneself in the form of a teacher, mentor, or peer. The learner seeks support from individuals who provide strategies for overcoming challenges, maintaining motivation, and learning a new skill as a transition to self-regulated learning. During socially shared learning, learners rely on regulation from the group members. All members support one another during the learning process through collaboration, cooperation, and teamwork. When designing lessons, keep in mind the type of learning you're asking of students, as well as the availability of regulating resources to complete the assignment. Building resilience through monitoring ANS states. In addition to utilizing regulating resources, increase learners' awareness of their affective inclinations, feelings, and emotions during task completion by inviting them to monitor their ANS states during the 3 academic emotional learning phases. When learners observe and identify their ANS states during academic emotional learning phases, they learn how to identify where they are on their learning paths before, during, and after academic tasks. If students are not in a ventral vagal state of learning during each of the learning phases, utilizing co-regulating or socially shared resources is an important first step toward learning how to move from dysregulation back into regulation. Begin observing learners during a lesson you plan. Notice nervous system states during learning phases, including the beginning of the lesson, during the lesson, and after lesson completion. Beginning. Which learners maintain a ventral vagal learning state and consistently move forward on their learning paths toward their goals? Who are the learners who exhibit signs of sympathetic or dorsal vagal states prior to beginning the lesson? During. Who are the learners in ventral vagal who access resources and are able to work through challenges? Who are the learners getting stuck in sympathetic states or show signs of dorsal vagal shutdown? After. How do the learners feel about their learning session? Do they acknowledge their growth? Do they have a critical voice that tells them they could have done better? Are they excited to continue to learn more cool stuff? Monitoring ANS states during learning. Phase 1. At start of lesson, what is my ANS state? Am I ready to learn? Phase 2. If the lesson gets more difficult, am I moving out of a learning state? Phase 3. What is my ANS state at the end of the lesson? Provide the 3 types of regulating resources to support learners as they move in and out of learning states. Here are a few ideas to jumpstart the learning regulation activities in Step 3. Conduct a self-regulation word hunt. Examine how many times the word self-regulation appears in regulation, mindfulness, or social-emotional learning programs you currently use. Now count how many times the words co-regulation or socially shared regulation are mentioned. With your staff, discuss ways to supplement these programs by integrating co-regulating and socially shared regulating experiences. Discover your co-regulating colleagues. Who provides positive ventral energy when you're in a sympathetic or dorsal vagal state? Begin observing your ANS states prior to meeting with this person and notice how your state shifts by co-regulating with someone who is a ventral resource for you. When you meet with your principal or supervisor, notice your ANS states before, during, and after your meeting. Did your states shift during the meeting? Did the principal or supervisor co-regulate with you and send messages of safety? Or did the meeting serve to further dysregulate you? If dysregulation occurs, who on the staff offers to share their regulated nervous system to help you move back into regulation? Modify the I do, we do, you do teaching strategy. The popular model of I do, we do, you do is an example of how to utilize co-regulated and socially shared regulation for learning. In this activity, we'll modify this model from the original format to integrate the 3 types of learning while including a polyvagal emphasis on co-regulation. The I do portion is an example of co-regulated learning, where the adult teaches the required skills needed for learners to complete the lesson. The resources for regulation are outside the learner, with the learner relying on the teacher for support, encouragement, skill instruction, and regulation. The teacher gradually releases the responsibility to the learners during the we do portion of the lesson. In this modification, the we do portion is a socially shared learning experience where learners work together in groups to complete the lesson and may ask one another for help or learn by observing others completing the task. Learning becomes a collaborative, reciprocal, and shared experience. Regulation happens between learners, with those understanding the assignment better than others, helping and supporting learners who need more assistance. The objective during the we do phase is to keep learners on their learning paths by socially sharing the learning process and monitoring ANS states along the way. The you do portion requires self-regulated learning for the learner to complete the lesson independently and remain regulated throughout the process. However, fellow learners and the teacher remain available as questions arise about the assignment, or if learners notice themselves shifting into sympathetic or dorsal vagal states, moving away from ventral learning. Many programs work on regulation skills separately from academics. Let's see what happens when you learn how to integrate different types of regulating resources directly into your learners' academic lessons. Since moving with partners or as a group is an effective way to maintain a ventral learning state, you'll be exploring ways to seamlessly integrate movement into lesson plans. Now that students have had opportunities to co-regulate and socially share regulation, they may find self-regulating easier. Remember that self-regulating isn't better than co-regulating or socially shared regulation. Students need all 3 forms of regulation throughout the day, depending on what their nervous systems require to move from dysregulation back into regulation. Step 3 tools and activities focus on integrating the 3 types of regulation into the school day and monitoring ANS states during learning. Movement is an important element for enhancing regulation, increasing engagement, and teaching skills so they are more likely to stick. Step 3 befriending benefits. The gift of co-regulation is its ability to provide additional support from another person when there's limited capacity to self-regulate. It's helpful for your well-being to have a colleague on campus who co-regulates with you when you need a friendly face, a warm hug, wise counsel, or a word of encouragement. Your students have additional regulating resources through co-regulation and socially shared experiences than they'd have if only relying on themselves for regulation. You're able to teach students to tune in and monitor how it feels to be on their ventral learning paths heading for success throughout academic activities. Learners may have an easier time with self-regulation if provided with opportunities to co-regulate and socially share regulation with other learners using movement activities. Step 3 Backpack Essentials. Identifying regulating resources. The one thing is you. If you want well-regulated, healthy, happy kids, you've got to surround them with well-regulated, healthy, happy adults. Christopher Willard, author of Growing Up Mindful: Essential Practices to Help Children, Teens, and Families Find Balance, Calm, and Resilience. Step 3 objectives: learn the 3 types of regulated learning, utilize the regulated learning tools, and implement different activities using the 3 types of regulated learning. Hi, it's Deborah M. again, and this is step 3, identifying regulating resources. Types of regulated learning planning tool is something that you can use just to check in and say, how much of the day am I requiring students to be self-regulated learners? How much of the day can they co-regulate with other learners? And when do we do socially shared regulated learning where we're in a group or with the whole class? The nervous system needs all 3 types of regulation in a day. And so one of the good ways to help students regulate is just break it up. So have some things where they're working by themselves, some things where they're working with a partner, and some things you're doing with the class, which you probably do naturally anyway. But sometimes I think really putting emphasis on it and looking at it and having a sheet like this where you plan it out a little bit, and especially like OTs that are PTs that are working privately, when you pull out students and stuff, I think try to be thinking in terms of, okay, is this students having to do this by themselves? Am I doing it with them in a co-regulated fashion? Do we bring it back into the classroom? And is there a way that we can share what we've learned in our pull-out sessions in the classroom and do it in a socially shared way? School Moves has a lot of activities, and there's a lot of activities in this book as well that you can use in that way. The activities can be done by themselves, can be done with a partner, and they can be done in small groups as well. The Minute Moves menu activity. Many of you are already using School Moves, so you're familiar with this. And I probably don't have to go into great detail. Most of you know deep pressure, where we use our thumb to put pressure onto the palm of our hands. We squeeze up the arms. We do the rubbing the palms together, the back of the palms, the fingers for skin sensation. Some resistive pressure is just clasping our hands together, pushing and pulling, and then rhythmic taps, just putting your arms across your shoulders and tapping rhythmically into about 70 beats per minute, like the heartbeat. So those are a menu of activities that students can choose from to do the next one, which is the Listen, Link, Move, Sync. So in the past, I did a video where I said listen, link, move, think, but I don't know. I felt like over time that didn't quite work out because it's hard sometimes to think about things. So instead, I changed it to sync, where we can notice whether our mind and body is in sync so we can feel it rather than think about it. So the first step is you do your heart to home, which is one hand over your heart, the other hand over your abdomen area, and you just check in. How am I feeling inside myself? And then you link it to your state. So what is the state I'm in? Am I in sympathetic fight or flight? Am I in dorsal shutdown? And then what moves can I do? Gentle moves or bigger moves. And there'll be bigger moves available in the book a little bit later on. So these are smaller, gentle moves that I can do. And then putting my hands together saying sync. And is my mind and body working together now? Am I moving forward on my learning path? If you bought the backpack, you have 25 bookmarks like this that have this on it. So in the bookmark, I think it's just a great way to remind kids, where are you right now? Check in with yourself. It's very easy, it's fast, and I think it's really a important step if you're using Zones or any other, the alert program. I think students still need to know what is their nervous system state. It's just the foundation of polyvagal theory. It's all the foundation of Deb Dana's work, working with a lot of people in trauma, and we're doing trauma-informed cares in school. A big part of it in the mental health field is they do ask their clients to check in and name, they call it notice and name their state. So I think this is something we need to start doing. And then monitoring during learning. So then we can take what we are feeling inside, notice it as we're going through our lessons. So at the start of the lesson, you could ask your group, Okay, let's check in. You could use the bookmark, however you want to do it. And you say, let's check in with ourselves. Where is everybody? And are we in ventral? So in the bookmark, I actually add ventral. In the listen, link, move, sync, ventral isn't there because I'm using that when somebody's dysregulated. But in the bookmark, are we in ventral? We're checking to see what state we're in, and ventral could be one of those. And then as we go through the lesson, if it's getting more difficult and we don't know where our regulating resources are and we don't know who we can ask for help, we can start going into sympathetic or dorsal vagal. So it's really important to check in halfway through. Where is everybody? How are we doing? Okay, let's do a quick check. And then at the end of the lesson, how was that for you? Was that lesson ventral for you? Did that feel good? Did you feel like you know how to do it? Did you learn something new? Was it a positive learning experience for you? Or did you feel overwhelmed by it and didn't know what to do next? Hopefully not, because you're checking in the middle. So if that starts to happen, you're going to get the regulating resources on board. You're going to find their backpacks, their metaphorical backpacks, and say, what do you have? What do I allow you to do? What can we use in our classroom and between others and relationships to help us if we're stuck? The visual vocabulary is now where we're taking it's a way. I felt like if I put it in the book, you could use it as a way to start checking in and asking learners how they're doing. So in this activity, where you're writing words in the rectangle, and then with their finger or their pencil or markers, they tap on the left side, and then they trace and then tap again and say the new word on the right side. So in this example, I'm using similar words that they can, like, what's another word we can use for happy? It's elated. So they would tap with their finger and they could trace down, then tap again on elated. That's a simple way. They don't need any tools. But if they have a pencil, they can use the eraser, tap on it with happy, trace it down, and elated. If you want to up the ante, you can have them switch hands. Okay, now let's tap with sad with our left finger. Now let's trace it down with our left. And or you could go left, right hand on the right left hand column, tap on, let's say, brave, and then with your left hand in the right column, you could say, okay, what's another word for brave? Valiant. So just another way to teach vocabulary and monitor. Check in. Where are you at the start, in the middle, and after you finish the activity? The Rhythm Moves partner activity is something that you can do, again, students can do it by themselves, with a partner, or in a group. So I actually had this so that there's a partner activity where partner one, they push their hands into the desk, or they raise their hands. That you can do it either way. Partner two, they stomp their feet. Then partner one, they do the clapping hands together while saying, if you've got words, they'd be saying words, but first I go through it without the words so that they know how to do it, and then I add the words. So they go through and do this activity, and it's just a way to help shift states. So if they are in sympathetic and they need some movement, they have this disorganized mobilization, you can help them get organized with this movement activity. And with a partner is a co-regulating activity, which the nervous system does need. Another activity is your arrow moves group activity. So now I'm looking at socially shared. How can we do this in a way that our groups are going back and forth, group one and group two? So it's same activity, very similar activity. We're going to be doing arrows. So group one points their arms in the direction of the arrow, and then they clap and jump. And then group two points their arms in the direction of the arrow, and they clap and jump at the same time. And then in row two, they put their arms up and then clap and jump. And then group two put their arms down, and so forth. And so you go through. And at the end, I'd kind of like everybody to do the whole thing together, just to bring them all together and say, okay, let's just do this whole thing. So the visual vocabulary was a self-regulated. So they're doing it on their own. And then the next activity was a partner activity, and this is a group activity, just showing you the different ways we can do regulation. If you enjoyed this reading or the animation, please remember to subscribe and like this video, as it makes me feel like all the time I'm spending reading and animating is worth my time, because it helps you to grow in your skills as a teacher or support staff. Thanks for all you do for children. We'll catch you over on step 4 coming up.